Almost every week, I see someone ask the question, why are white men so angry? And while I cannot begin to expound on the many reasons why that might be, what I can say is this: I view all social problems through a lens of societal systems, because as a sociologist, that's what I'm trained to do. And here is the design flaw in systems of privilege, when you build systems of hierarchy and privilege.
Can we talk about how miserable white people are for a second? Like, you know that white people are miserable, right? Like, have you ever looked a white person in the eye, even if they're like a big mental health person? You just look deep down and you're like, brother, you are not happy at all.
White men are the mental health problem in this country. Jim Crow, white men. Slavery, white men. Segregation, white men. Concentration camps for Asian Americans in the late 30s and early 40s. 1,800 people died. How many black people were hung from trees? 8,000. Let me guess. Oh yeah, once again, white men.
Let me ask guys, have you ever wondered why some people who seem to have everything, power, privilege, comfort, are often the most angry? It's a question that's been floating around for years, and sociologists recently broke it down in a way that flips the whole idea of privilege upside down. According to this perspective, privilege might not actually make life better. It might weaken the people who benefit from it. The argument is that when a system gives you everything, it also quietly takes something vital away: your ability to adapt, struggle, and grow. So today we are diving into this idea of how systems of privilege can end up creating fragility, anger, and resentment within the very people it was meant to, uplift.
White men are the mental health problem in this country. Jim Crow, white men. Slavery, white men. Segregation, white men. Concentration camps for Asian Americans in the late 30s and early 40s. 1,800 people died. How many black people were hung from trees? 8,000. Let me guess. Oh yeah, once again, white men. The gun violence? 98% are men. 84% are white men, U.S. citizens. I see a trend. How about the Middle Passage, where 1.2 African Americans died? Oh yeah, once again, white men. Why was the Second Amendment written? Let me think. So black people couldn't have their freedoms, so the white men could once again control them. Who's in the White House? An adjudicated rape to felon white man. Wow, I see a trend. But somehow Americans are just begging to blame a trans person, a non-white person. See, what happened to George Floyd is symbolic of what's happening in this country. The white man putting his knee on the neck of a non-white person and sitting there in broad daylight with the balls to say, who's going to stop me? And that's what we're seeing right now. So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves as a fucking country. Who's going to stop them? Because I'm just one person here. Now, I don't know about you, but I got friends and family that are sitting behind the white privilege, and I want nothing to do with them. Not because of who they are, because their lack of action.
Can we talk about how miserable white people are for a second? Like, you know that white people are miserable, right? Like, have you ever looked a white person in the eye, even if they're like a big mental health person? You just look deep down and you're like, brother, you are not happy at all. And truly, it breaks my heart. But one reason, I think, one of the main reasons that a lot of white people, a lot of us are really unhappy and miserable is because we lack internal congruence. Now, congruence is a concept we learned early in grad school to help people heal. And congruence is basically internal alignment. Values and actions are on the same page, right? Like, we accept every part of ourselves. We feel peace, security in who we are, congruence. And no matter how hard you try, you can never find internal congruence if you're not congruent with the world around you. If you're not understanding what's real and seeing reality and affirming what's true. So like white people who deny patriarchy and capitalism's negative effect and oppression of the world and genocide that's happening around the world, like that's incongruent with reality. That is going to have an effect on us internally. Because to deny what's happening in real time, we have to deny certain parts of us, certain emotions, certain thoughts that come up. And the more we run for that, the more incongruent and separate we feel, the more dissonance that comes, the more miserable we are. And a lot of times we're not actually dealing with our own pain and our own reality, because we're all suffering under capitalism and white supremacy. Like, it affects us different ways in intersectionality, but like it affects us white people too. You don't think a stormtrooper in the fucking Star Wars movies hates his life? You don't think he hates being bossed around all the time? You don't think poor white people living in the empire, like in a city walls, like in a Game of Thrones, like you don't think that they're miserable under it, even though they're not miserable the most? To be congruent inside, to not be miserable anymore, it takes accepting the realities of the world, seeing how those toxic systems affect us, and then moving to actually be congruent.
Just finished a morning run, sweating bullets, but I have to say this while I'm thinking about it. Almost every week, I see someone ask the question, why are white men so angry? And while I cannot begin to expound on the many reasons why that might be, what I can say is this: I view all social problems through a lens of societal systems, because as a sociologist, that's what I'm trained to do. And here is the design flaw in systems of privilege. When you build systems of hierarchy and privilege, when you build systems of hierarchy and privilege, the privilege is actually what weakens you. The privilege makes you weak because when you socialize an entire group of people to believe that I exist, therefore I deserve. I exist, therefore I am entitled. I exist, therefore the path of prosperity should be laid out very cleanly ahead of me, and I don't have to work hard, and I don't have to struggle, and I don't have to dig deep. I just have to receive. Meanwhile, you are socializing all other groups to survive with less resources, with less privilege. And so as a byproduct of their survival, they are becoming adaptable, resilient, creative, resourceful. They are developing the muscle for survival that they subsequently turn into systems for success and prosperity. Meanwhile, the privileged group is not developing these systems. And when they start to see the disenfranchised group becoming stronger, gaining opportunities, building systems of success, rather than say, hey, maybe we ought to be doing that too, no. Privilege doubles down. Privilege digs deep into the well of anger and grievance and says, you are the reason why I can't be successful. You are taking opportunities away from me and my children and generations. And so now, rather than develop the muscle of resilience, what I'm going to do now is start taking privileges away from you. And now I'm going to start taking your resources. And now I'm going to start burning your house down in hopes that you will get back to where I think you ought to be, which is underneath me. Not realizing that the more you do that, the more privileges you take away, the more systems of success you try to dismantle, you are only making them more creative, more adaptable, more resilient, and more resourceful. So it becomes this Ouroboros, this snake eating its own tail, because the very system that you designed to uplift yourself is actually the one that is putting you far behind, because you never develop the muscle, the work ethic, the resilience, the innovation, and the creativity as the disenfranchised group.
The sociologist explains that privilege operates like an invisible classroom. It teaches one group of people that success should come easily, that prosperity should be handed to them just for existing. This kind of social conditioning breeds entitlement. Ideas like, I exist, therefore I deserve. The problem is that entitlement removes the need for effort. It takes away the hunger to push, to struggle, to innovate. And without that struggle, you never build the muscle that real success demands. On the flip side, those without privilege, the ones society often overlooks, are forced to grind, adapt, and make something out of nothing. They turn survival into strength. They build resilience, creativity, and grit. The exact tools the privileged group never had to develop. And that is where the twist comes in. When the privileged see those once marginalized groups thriving, they don't see reflect. Instead, they grow resentful. They point fingers, not inward, but outward. The sociologist calls this phenomenon a design flaw in systems of hierarchy and privilege. The very thing meant to keep one group at the top is the same thing holding them back. When you grow up believing the path to success is supposed to be smooth, you never develop the instinct to survive when life gets rough. You don't learn to pivot, how to hustle, or how to rebuild after failure. You expect the system to keep working in your favor forever. But when times change, when opportunity spreads, when other groups start winning, that illusion cracks. Suddenly, the privileged realize they are not equipped to compete on equal ground. And instead of asking, what can I learn? They often ask, who can I blame? That is where the anger comes from. Not because others are taking something away from you, but because they are doing what privileged never taught them to do, to adapt. Disfranchised groups have always had to make something out of scarcity. They've learned to stretch every resource, turn struggle into strategy and pain into productivity over time. Those habits become their superpowers. Meanwhile, privilege becomes a soft cage. It whispers comfort but steals resilience. It rewards entitlement but pushes growth. It promises superiority while quietly ensuring dependency. And when those trapped in privilege look around and see others rising, stronger, smarter, more capable, they panic. Instead of working on their own muscle, they reach for control. They double down. They claim, you are taking my opportunities, you are threatening my future. But here's the irony. The more they try to pull others down, the weaker they become. The sociologist compared it to a snake eating its own tail. The system eats itself because it keeps reproducing fragility. Every time privilege tries to take something back, whether it's economic, power, cultural space, or social visibility, it ends up fueling the very resilience it fears. Every time a door is closed on disenfranchised group, they build a window. Every time a wall goes up, they learn how to climb. That is the paradox of oppression. It breeds strength in those it tries to silence. And that is the tragedy of privilege. It breeds weakness in those it tries to elevate. So when we see anger erupt from those who those who've historically had the upper hand, we are not just seeing emotion, we are seeing a system in crisis, a structure realizing that its own logic doesn't work anymore. Think about it. When people are used to winning by default, fairness feels oppression. Equality feels like loss, and instead of developing resilience, some dig deeper into grievance. They burn bridges, sometimes literally and figuratively, hoping to return things to how they used to be. But there is no going back. The world rewards adaptability now. Innovation, creativity, perseverance, and those are the exact traits privilege failed to teach. That is why the sociologist point hits so hard. Privilege might look like power, but in the long run, it's a trap. It creates people who don't know how to fight when life stops being easy. Meanwhile, the so-called disadvantaged have been training for this long. They know how to rebuild from nothing, how to survive uncertainty, how to turn pain into progress. So when privilege lashes out in anger, it's not just hostility, it's fear. Fear of irrelevance, fear of having to compete without an advantage, fear of realizing that struggle, the very thing they once looked down on, is what truly builds strength. In the end, the message is clear. Privilege without purpose collapses on itself. Systems that promise superiority without effort will always decay from within. And those who've learned to survive without privilege, they are not just surviving anymore. They are leading. Guys, let me know. What do you think? Drop a comment. Also remember to subscribe, like, and share as well. And until next time, bye-bye.